Today, we will be showing you how to install the Moderate 75 RTGO Playset. Once you have located all the tools required in order to complete the installation, make sure that you are following all the local guidelines and regulations in order to complete the installation safely. You can now start with the tower assembly section. A level and solid surface is recommended. Before setting up, please read the leveling tips in your assembly manual. You can start by unpacking the kit that we will provide for you. Make sure to locate all the necessary items in order to complete the installation. If for whatever reason there are any missing pieces, please contact us at the number listed on your screen. Locate and prepare the base bundle and locate the tower hardware bag. Arrange the items so that all 2x6s fit inside the corner brackets, and using the number 2 drive bit, fasten the bracket to the 2x6 with 2 washer head screws into the small screw holes in the bracket. Repeat this for the 3 remaining corners. To check if the base is square, measure from corner to corner, then measure the opposite corner to corner. Locate the post bundle number 1 and 2 and note the holes in each post. Start by locating the front right post, which will have extra holes at the top for the swing beam. The top 2 holes will face the front and back of the playset. Press the bottom of the front right post against the inside corner of the base and fasten it using 4 9 1/16 inch by 4 inch lags with 3 8-inch washers. Reference the manual and note that each post will be oriented so that the pre-drilled holes will be facing out. Repeat the same steps you did for the front right post for the remaining posts. Place one of the items labeled in the manual as D on the front or back of the tower, and make sure the joist holders are on the inside of the tower with the opening facing up. Using 4 9 1/16 inch lags and 3 8-inch washers, drill into the large holes of the 2x6 so that the tip of the lags are showing on the other side. Use the tip of the lags to find the holes on the 4x4 post and fasten the lags into them. Place item B in the open ends of the corner brackets. Using 4 9 1/16 inch lags and 3 8-inch washers, drill into the large holes on the side with corner brackets to fasten B to the 4x4. Place the other D item on the remaining side of the tower, fitting the corner brackets over the 2x6, and make sure the joist openings are facing up. Install this using the same hardware as before. Using the number 2 drive bit, finish fastening the brackets into the 2x6s with 3 washer head screws, one on the top, bottom, and middle. You can now place the 3 joists into the joist hangers. You can now move on to the floor assembly section. Locate and prepare the floorboard bundle and the floor hardware bag. Place all of the floorboards labeled F1 between the 4x4 posts perpendicular from the joist below them. Then place the 2 floorboards labeled F2 on the edges, and make sure to note that the corner holes on these are facing the outside of the tower. Using the number 2 drive bit, drill 1 polybuster screw into a pre-punched corner hole. Drill the remaining screws into the pre-punched holes on all remaining floorboards. Each hole will line up with the joists and baseboards underneath. You can now move on to the railing and poly slat assembly section. Place the railing labeled G1 on the front of the tower with the plaque facing outward. Align the holes with the 4x4 holes and fasten to the posts with 2 9 1/16 inch lags and 3 8-inch washers, 1 per side. Repeat this process for the railing labeled G2, which will be installed on the back of the tower. Items H1 and H2 are the same but mirrored. One of the sides will have more holes than the other. Both will have holes on one of the thin sides. Place them together so the flat caps touch. The holes on the shorter side will face up. The thicker sides with more holes will be on the same side. H3 will have through holes to match the holes that don't go all the way through on H1 and H2. Fasten them together using 4 9 1/16 inch by 3 inch lags and 3 8-inch washers. Repeat this process to create the second assembly. Place the H assemblies that you just made on the sides of the tower with H3 fitting in between the 4x4 posts. Fasten them both onto the 4x4 posts with 4 9 1/16 inch lags and 3 8-inch washers per side. Using the number 2 square drive bit, drill 2-inch washer head screws into the poly slat boards on each side in the pre-punched holes just enough so it is barely protruding through the other side. On one of the sides of the tower, place 1 poly slat in the center of the railing. Align the poly slat spacer flush with the bottom of the 2x6 board with the poly slat in the center fitting in one of the grooves. Have a second person hold the poly slat spacer in place and fasten the bottom 2-inch washer head screw into the 2x6 board, followed by the top 2-inch washer head screw into the railing. Using the center poly slat as a marker, keep the poly slat spacer aligned with the bottom of the 2x6 board, and one by one, continue placing the rest of the poly slats in the grooves of the spacer and install the bottoms of them with 2-inch washer head screws. There should be 15 total poly slats on both sides of the tower. Once all the bottom of the poly slats have been installed, move the poly slat spacer up and install the tops of the poly slats. Repeat this process for both of the sides of the tower. Place the poly slat spacer centered on the front of the tower and flush with the bottom of the 2x6 board. Repeat the steps you use for the sides of the tower for the front and back of the tower, and install 3 poly slats on both sides of the back and front, leaving room for the ladder and the waterfall slide. You can now move on to the ladder assembly section. Place the ladder on the back of the tower with the bottom of the ladder touching the ground and the top of the ladder aligned with the tower deck and centered on the tower. Using the 2 square drive bit, drill 6 2-inch washer head screws through the pre-punched holes on the ladder into the tower 2x6. Using 2 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch lags and 5/16 inch washers, fasten the top of the handrail into the tower railing. Using 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch lag and 5/16 inch washers, fasten the handrail channel through the outer edge of the ladder. You can now move on to the swing frame assembly section. Locate the swing beam, swing frame, and swing frame hardware bag. Place items labeled K as shown in the manual. The large holes on K1 and K2 will line up with the holes on K3 and K4, leaving 2 holes open on the end. Fasten the items together using 13 9/16 inch by 3 inch lags and 3/8 inch washers through the large holes, and do not over-tighten. Place the 1-inch hole plugs into the holes to cover the lags. Place K and L together as shown in the manual, with the swing hooks facing down and the bottom hole on L is facing away from K. Align the holes of the 2 and fasten them together using 2 9/16 inch by 6.5 inch bolts, 4 3/8 inch washers, and 2 9/16 inch locking nuts. Set the swing frame upright and place the unsupported end of K on the inner railing of the tower. Align the holes on the end of the 2x6 swing beam with the holes on the back of the 4x4 post. Fasten them together using the same hardware in the previous step. Place item M on the ground on the outside of L. Align the center hole on M with the holes at the bottom of L. Fasten them together using 1 9/16 inch by 4 inch lags and 3/8 inch washers. Place the 2 end braces on either side of L and align the pre-drilled holes, and note to make sure the bottom hole is facing away from the tower. Fasten the top of N to the 4x4 post using 2 9/16 inch by 4 inch lags and 3/8 inch washers. Fasten the bottom of N to M using the same hardware. You can now move on to the roof assembly section. Place the 2 items labeled O on top of the center of the longer railings and align the holes. Fasten them together using 2 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch lags and 5/16 inch washers per 2x4. Place the item labeled P1 on top of the 2 O's and align the holes on the ends of P1 with the holes on the top of O. Fasten them together using 2 9/16 inch by 4 inch lags and 3/8 inch washers. Place one of the P2 boards on one of the ends of the long railings. Using 2 9/16 inch by 4 inch lags and 3/8 inch washers, drill into the P2 holes and into the railing end holes so that it stays in place as shown in the manual. Drape the P2 canvas over P1. Place the other P2 board on the other end of the long railings and align the holes, then fasten using the same hardware. Finish fully fastening the other side from the previous step. You can now move on to the accessory and stake assembly section. Place the waterfall slide center on the front of the tower and position it so the holes are directly above the 2x6. Using the numbered 2 square drive bit, fasten the slide with 3 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch pan head screws and 5/16 inch washers. Hang the belt swing and the trapeze from the swing hooks on the swing beam. There will be excess chain to adjust the height of the swing or trapeze to the appropriate height. Using a hammer, drive the stake into the ground perpendicular to the braces. Fasten the stakes to the swing beam using 2 1/2 inch by 1 1/2 inch lags and 2 5/16 inch washers.